Hey y'all, it's Kelly from Dixie Darlins Tumblers here, and today I've got this beautiful rainbow zigzag pattern vinyl I'm going to use. So I'm going to wrap the cup in that, then I'm going to add a little opal glitter on top of that, a few layers of epoxy, then lay some vinyl stars, spray paint it for a peekaboo effect, then I'm going to add a decal. So there's a few steps, but they're pretty basic. So if anything I'm not clear on, please ask questions. I hope that you guys enjoy the design. Please join my Facebook group and share your creations there. I love to see what you guys come up with. And I will list all the products that I used today in the description box below. So make sure you check out those links along with some discount codes that I'm going to include. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss my future tutorials. I hope you guys enjoy it and thank y'all for watching. So I'm starting with this beautiful neon rainbow zigzag pattern vinyl from the Vinyl Cottage, and it always comes with this little white border on the edge. So I just take my little Cricut cutter and cut the edge of it off. And I also do this to keep, so I know what the vinyl actually is. She always prints at the bottom. So this is Neon Rainbow 06 and the Vinyl Cottage. And then I'm starting with a 24-ounce plump that is sanded, and then I just wipe it down with a paper towel with some alcohol on it, and then I'm going to go ahead and take my vinyl and wrap it around. So I kind of know that I want the middle of the zigzag pattern in the middle of the cup, so that's kind of where I've laid the cup down on top of the vinyl. And then I'm just going to trim this little edge off the backing here and then place it on the cup. And this is the 24-ounce plump from the Steel Magnolia. I love this size and shape. And then I'm just going to press that little edge there that I trimmed off the backing onto the cup. And then I'm just going to make sure that it's lined up correctly around the top so my top edge meets. And then when I get that right where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and take the rest of the backing off, but I'm just pulling a little bit. And then as I apply my vinyl around the cup, you can kind of see here how it pushes the backing off as I apply the vinyl to the cup. And I just go from side to side. I do better if I hold the direction that I'm pushing it towards me, and then I just run my hand up and down, just making sure to get any bubbles out as I'm going around the cup. And then I do try to pull it pretty tight at the bottom just to make sure there's not any bubbles getting there. And then I'm just going to trim this excess backing off that's kind of in my way. And you guys have seen me do this. I lay a piece of painter's tape down, just a little offset of the edge, so I have a place where I can run my craft knife that creates a little overlap in the vinyl. So I make sure that I can cut it straight, and then I'm also I don't have any of the stainless part of the cup showing through. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take my craft knife and trim off this excess piece right here. And then I'm going to press that firmly down over the tape, and then take my craft knife here and just trim right along that edge, pressing up against where the tape lays on the cup. Then I'm going to peel off that excess, and then I'm going to remove my tape after I get this excess vinyl off here. And then I'm going to pull it really tight over the top just to make sure that it's laying firmly against the top of the cup. You can kind of see how I'm just stretching it over there to make sure, and then I'm just going to trim that excess off there as well. And if y'all seen me vinyl wrap a cup before, you know that I always like to use a really sharp, new, fresh blade on this craft knife. And I get these packs on Amazon, and they're like 60 in a pack. So they're great that almost every time I'm going to vinyl wrap a cup that I have to cut a seam, I'm going to use a new blade on there. And then I'm just going to pull the bottom right around as tight as I can, stretch it out to make sure there's no creases from the side of the cup around to the bottom. And these plumps make it so easy from the Steel Magnolia where they already have the little seam around the bottom. So I can just take my craft knife, and I'm just going to run it right through there. And then you can take whatever little tool you have. You can even use a credit card. You guys have seen me probably, I use my fingernail a lot of the times just to run that down, just to press it right down in that seam right there, just to make sure it's down pretty good and it's not going to lift up when I go to put epoxy on it. And then I am going to go in to sand this cup. I just sand right around the rim because I want to make sure that there's like an exposed area right there when I'm going to put this epoxy on. So I've mixed up Counterculture's regular artist resin here, and I mixed up more than I'm going to need. You don't even, like you can see, I'm just applying a very thin coat of epoxy here, just enough to get it where the glitter is going to stick to it. So I'm just going to coat it down really good, and then once I've let that sit for just about 5 minutes, I'm going to go into glittering, and I'm going to use Peachy Olive glitters. I'm going to use 3 different colors, and honestly, y'all, I wasn't really sure when I started this cup. I kind of thought my initial intention was to just go in with some chunky, a little bit of a smaller cut, and then I was going to leave the open exposed. But then once I started placing the glitter on, I decided I was just going to cover the whole cup in glitter, because you could, the colors in this vinyl pattern showed through so well. So I'm adding Peachy Olive Glitters Quinn right here. It's a chunky opal that's just really pretty. Then I'm going to go in and add Athena by Peachy Olive Glitter, because the pattern had a little bit of gold in it, so I was going to try to bring out that gold in it. So I'm going to add the Quinn here first, which is one of my favorites from them. Then I'm going to add a little Athena, and then I'm going to go in with Bifrost. So it's a beautiful opal. That's the one I was kind of going to add a little bit to it at the top and the bottom and leave the center exposed. And then once I started adding it, I loved it so much, I just decided to cover the whole cup in it. But I did decide to stay with the chunkies just on the edge. So it does add a little dimension when the cup has epoxy on it. You still have the chunkier, and then the Athena brings the gold in just at the top and the bottom. So here you can see I'm just adding a little bit of Athena in just to throw a little gold on the top and the bottom, just to kind of bring out those gold accents in the vinyl. And then I did go ahead and add a little bit of Athena to the bottom of the cup also. And now I'm going in with the Bifrost, and I did just start adding it to the top and the bottom, and then I was like, gosh, this vinyl shows through this color so well, and it just gives it the perfect sparkle that I just kind of decided, let's just go with it all over the cup. And it's kind of funny, once I get this cup glittered and on the turner, I did a live in my Facebook group last week, and I had some friends of mine that wanted to make a cup, and so one of my friends hand painted a tie-dye, and once these cups are next to each other, it's kind of funny that you can't really tell which one's hand painted and which one's the vinyl. So it was really fun to see that. And after I let that dry for about 6 hours, I do go into a coat of Counterculture's Fast Set. I let that dry for about 3 hours, and then I end up adding a second coat of Counterculture's Fast Set here also. And I'm just using about 25 milliliters. I'm mixed up here for extra, but I ended up using about between 20 and 25 milliliters on each cup. On these 24-ounce plumps, you pretty much can get, I wanted a little bit thicker just because I had that chunky glitter in there. So I did use about 25 milliliters on the first coat, and then only about 20 on the second coat. And then I'm going to use my torch here to pop any bubbles. And then after I let that dry for about 3 hours, I am going to go in to apply my vinyl. So I've kind of reverse weeded this. So I went into this thinking, okay, I can print off all these little stars and try to get the vinyl on there, which is basically going to be impossible. Or I can kind of reverse weed it, take out all the little details, apply the other vinyl to the cup, and then spray paint, which would probably be a lot easier than trying to apply all these tiny little vinyl stars. So that's what I end up doing. And I know that sometimes I do things the hard way, y'all. So for those of you who can see things in Design Space better than I can, obviously this would have been the best to weld it all together in my size, because I did go in and create a square in Design Space, and then I put all my little graphics in that square, so I knew the width and the height of the cup. So I think this cup's like 8.5 by 9.75, or 8 by, I think it's 8.5 by 9.75. And I did create a square that way. But I'm such a visual person kind of as I go. I didn't know exactly what pattern I want other than the center pattern. I knew that I wanted that to kind of be the focal point and have a decal in the center. So I did measure that one, which was about 5 inches by 5 inches basically. And then the other ones I just kind of printed off in random sizes so I could apply them as I go. So I knew I kind of had a vague pattern of what I wanted, but I knew that I was going to kind of have to do it as I went. And then I just go back in and place little random pieces of vinyl or tape on top of it to cover up the other places. So you'll see like all the places aren't going to be covered up because I'm doing it this way. But so I knew it'd be a little extra work on me, but I knew that for me, sometimes I have to see it as I go, if that makes sense. So I apologize for sometimes doing things the hard way. I know that there's a lot easier way to do this sometimes. Obviously, if you weld in a design space, it's just visually in my creative mind space. Sometimes I have to do it as I go. And obviously you can see that I'm just applying the transfer tape to the vinyl that I've weeded out the stars, like I've reverse weeded the vinyl. So I'm basically just trying to place the places that I want to spray paint, and then the rest of it I'm just going to cover up with random pieces of vinyl. And so now I've just basically worked my way around the cup, placing the different designs where they'll fit, and then I'm kind of trimming off where they're overlapping, since I didn't really have a set pattern here where they were one big piece of vinyl where I could wrap around. It did take a little extra effort to go in and like fill in all the gaps to make sure that they were covered so that they wouldn't get paint on places that I did not want. And then I do ended up going and just putting painter's tape on the bottom of the cup after I've laid all the vinyl stars. And here you can see I'm just taking like the random excess pieces of vinyl that I had to cover up any little places that are a gap in between, you know, where one piece of vinyl is and the other piece of vinyl. So it really wasn't that bad. It just took a little bit of extra work to go in and fill in those little holes there. And then once I get the vinyl on, I am going to spray a coat of this Modern Mint. And then once I let that dry, I let it dry actually overnight. It just happened to be, but probably within an hour you'd be able to pull off the vinyl. I ended up just leaving it overnight. And then I'm just going to go in and pull off all the vinyl pieces now. So I'm not going to lie, this was a little bit of a chore here. It took me a little bit longer than I expected to. And I think if you used a matte paint, it wouldn't be as bad. This happened to be a gloss, so it just took me a little bit longer. And I'm just going to continue to work my way around the cup. It is a little time consuming to do this, especially since I used this gloss paint. It seemed to stick a little bit more, but it was pretty easy to do with the weeding tool. Just because a lot of times you have to be really careful not to scratch the painted areas, but I guess because the stars were so little, I didn't have that issue with this cup. And then once I finished, I'm just going around and kind of running my hand around it just to make sure I don't feel any vinyl that needs to be taken off. A lot of those stars had little stars inside of them that I had to go back in and weed out. And then once I'm done with that, I basically went straight into a coat of epoxy. I am going to add a little bit of Peachy Olive Glitters Bright just to give a little bit of bling to the stars that I've painted. But you can see I had just a little bit. I don't even cover the top. I mean, just kind of like 2 little bumps of the glitter shaker, and that's all I've added in there. And I am using Counterculture's Fast Set also here. So I mixed up about 20 milliliters. I've added my bright, and now I'm going to apply that coat. And I definitely just wanted a little touch of bright here because I did not want to distract from the Bifrost that's underneath. It was such a pretty sparkle that I definitely didn't want to distract, but I did want to have just a little bit of bling on top of those stars. And then now somehow I did not even record adding the decal, but I am going to go in here with Counterculture's Quick Coat because I've done an offset here, and I actually did it with the Phonto app, and I just created it myself. And I go over in one of my other tutorials using the Phonto app, so I'm going to link that here. I'm going to put it up here on the screen, and I'll also link it in the description box below for y'all. So I've done this, created my decal in the Phonto app, and then I've printed it off, and then I've applied it. So sorry y'all, I missed recording that. And now I'm just applying a layer of Quick Coat. So this is an opal vinyl, and I just wanted to make sure that I layered it. And then also sometimes when you use a torch on top of a holographic or chrome vinyl, if you get a little too close, you can singe that vinyl so easily. So anytime I do that, not only to seal, but I also do it just to make sure that when I go over it with my torch really quick, it doesn't create any kind of singed places on the vinyl. And I'm just adding, I love this little, the little squeeze top that they have. So basically you can just put a few drops on at a time, and that's all I'm adding. This stuff goes so far, and I've just got my silicone brush and I'm just smoothing it out on the cup. So then after that dries for about 30 minutes, I am going into a layer of Counterculture's Artist Resin. So I've mixed up about 25 milliliters here. I am gonna apply this coat here, and I'm going to use my torch to pop any bubbles. And then kind of at this point I decided, you know what, I'm still not 100% where I want to be. So I end up going back and printing in that same white, it's kind of a white opal vinyl here that I've done the decal with. I want to layer in some offset pieces to the stars. So I'm going to go in and print off. I basically just take those same patterns that I created the first ones with, and I'm going to print those out again in the opal vinyl, and then I'm just going to lay those in on the offset, kind of some of the just random areas on the stars. And now I'm just randomly going around and placing those stars. Some of the outlines, some of the actually stars, no real pattern, just randomly placing them on the cup. And then right after that, I'm going to go in with a layer of Counterculture's Artist Resin. I've mixed up about 25 milliliters of epoxy here, and I'm going to apply that, use my torch to pop any bubbles, and then we have our final design. So I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you like the design. Please join our Facebook group, Dixie Darlins Tumbler. Share your creations with me. Go like, share, subscribe, all that fun, crazy stuff. Thank y'all for watching, and I'll see y'all again soon.